Hey guys, Theodore Burns here, going to show you one of my fast laps and a walkthrough for the Indy Pro 2000 around Suzuka for this, I believe it's week 9 iRacing. So did a couple laps here and then did a race sim, set my fastest lap at the end of the race sim, was able to get pretty consistent here, and the fastest lap I did was a 1:54.533. I did this in the standard VRS conditions, as you can see there, moderate track usage, this is fixed weather. I think the VRS time is a 54.2, right around that range, so not too far off. With that, show you the lap and then talk a little bit about the setup and how to drive it afterwards. Where were we? Alright, and there you have it. Here's where my lap sat in relation to my optimal. So it's a couple tenths off actually. This was the following lap. I was able to get a really good run out of Spoon. So yeah, so optimal of 54.2 around here is not bad. Should be a pretty quick lap throughout this week. So first off, show you guys the setup I've been using. Right around medium, high downforce. Pretty straightforward standard setup as an American unit. So here we go back to the metric. For any of you guys use that. And my diff settings as well. Alright, so without further ado, can start going through the lap corner by corner. So approached into turn 1, obviously very fast coming in at the end of the straight. It's kind of a turn-in point. I like to try and use, the 50 or the end of this access road, but I don't want to. I want to make sure my eyes are not looking over here on the left-hand side. I'm more looking at the apex and kind of using this in my peripheral. Keeping your vision into the corner is extremely important into this corner, because if you're looking on the outside, you'll probably have a bit late of a turn-in, and your eyes will be following around the outside of the corner, and you're going to be staring off into the gravel, and the car is going to drive off into the gravel. So it's very important to keep our eyes pointed towards the apex. Kind of use any of these references more in the peripheral. So especially for turn 1, I want to actually start turning into the corner while I'm still on full throttle. Turn down into the apex here. Then once I get the car pointed down towards the apex is when I'm finally going to lift and try doing my braking with pretty straight hands, basically after this first apex before I have to turn it back at the second apex down there. This is pretty important to turn it in while still flat because there's a lot of camber in the road, and so I want to basically turn into and drive the car into the camber. If I lift off here, I'm just scrubbing a lot of speed and just wasting a lot of time because with all the camber in the road, I can drive it in extremely deep and carry a lot of speed through this corner. So you drive it in almost all the way down to about a car or two length off of the curbs. And then I'm going to start just a real light brake, kind of easy in. And as soon as I start hitting that brake, I have to straighten the hands up quite a bit. Not completely straight because I still need to kind of make this corner, but I'm following the camber of the road and straight hands as I'm just kind of trailing in that brake at about 30%. Car's going to naturally kind of track out to left here. I'm not looking over here. I don't want to drive over to this curb. That's a great way to get your tires on it or to lose the car again with our eyes. You don't want to be looking out here. I want to keep focusing on the second apex. If you get the first corner right and carry in enough speed, the car will naturally track out to this curb, and that's what we're looking for in the corner. Once I start to turn in, find my second apex, my eyes find the second apex, I'm going to start to turn into the corner, and as I do that, I will quickly trail off that remaining 20% of the brake. We still have quite a bit of camber here in the road to help us, so we can roll this in quite quickly. Once I start getting down to the apex, I can start to get on power. The setup that I have, it really likes to turn on power, so we can carry just that little bit at the apex to help further rotate the car around the corner. Once I hit the apex and I get that sense of rotation in the back of the car, I can start to ease into full power. Not getting to full until I have the car totally straightened up. If I was at full power right now, the rear end will step out a little bit. You get a little bit of wheel spin. It's pretty manageable in this car, but it will cost you about 0.5 to 1/10 on the exit. And so then full power and drive it, track out, manage the oversteer, and that's how you do the first complex of corners for the S's. I'm going to play back through that one more time in the real speed so you guys can watch that. So just again, really important, keep a nice smooth inputs on the wheel, especially in that first section. I want to keep the car loaded up on the left side tires. Don't want to be jacking on the steering, back straight and to the right. I want to keep kind of the car always loaded on the left side tires. It's very important not to get it settled back up and keep it loaded that entire section. And that will also be pretty important through the S's here. Another very tricky section. One of the signature series of corners of the Suzuka circuit. So again, I'm going to start track right as I enter into the S's, and I'm going to try and carry in a lot of speed. Again, I'm going to turn in while on full power. But once I get the car actually pointed in towards the corner, I'm going to start to bail out, and you can take this corner probably almost flat out, but it puts you in a really bad spot for the next couple of corners. So the whole theme of the S's section is to kind of compromise the entry to one corner so you get a better exit out of it. And if you do that properly, you'll end up carrying the most speed through this section. And so here we go. It's just about 50% throttle to get into the corner. I'm going to give it just a little squirt back on exit. As I come here, and then it's ease out, and I'm actually going to trail the brakes and grab a downshift to third gear pretty early as I turn into the right-hander here. Again, I want to try and stay really tight onto this curb, so that sets me up for a better exit onto the next corner. Once I get down onto the curb, I can start to ease into that throttle again. Again, only about 50%, but that's just helping the rotation, using the on-power rotation of the setup to drive the car out of the corner. I want to end up just about mid-track coming out of this one. So once I get the car in mid-track, I can give another little squirt of throttle, back to full, and as I turn into the left-hander, I want to, this is kind of like a little bit of a double apex. I want to brush this curb, get just slightly off, and then back onto the curb is kind of my approach into it. So again, turn in on power, bail out of the power, don't don't really hit the brake, just a little tap on the, about 2% there, out of throttle. It kind of hit this first apex, start to get back into the throttle. The car kind of tracks out just a little bit here, but now I'm using the on power rotation to kind of bring it back onto the curb just a little bit, and now it's back to a nice squirt of throttle. Again, exiting about mid-track. You can start carrying more speed through these corners, but you're going to be pushing wide and compromising the next corner. So it's better to sacrifice the corners and just have a lot of patience through the section. It feels way slower at first because you're lifting and coasting a little bit through the corners. Trying not to get on throttle too early, but patience is the key to getting through the S's quickly. This last right-hander is a very tricky one because the road, as you can see, kind of drops off on us, so it's going to be extremely difficult to keep the car in tight. So because of that, I turn into the corner fairly early, again, kind of turning it on power and then bailing out to kind of already load the left side tires and not have kind of two motions of a lift which loads the front tires and then a turn to load the left side tires. I want to kind of do all that in one smooth motion to just kind of load the left side tires very gradually as I'm lifting off of the throttle. And this corner is extremely important to be patient in. As you can see, I have no inputs rolling through most of this corner. I try not to get too much onto this curb because it does kind of slope upwards, so you can get some rotation out of the curb if you dip a tire just on just onto the curb, but if you get too much curb, it can kind of upset the car a little bit and end up throwing you off of the curb without the required rotation and going a little wide. But I do like to try and get the right front just barely onto the tip of the curb, which will help rotate the car a little bit. So through this corner, I'd like to try and roll third gear. Would be the ideal gear, and it just part of that is making sure you have the rotation and you're in a good spot at about this point in the corner. If the car is starting to track out a little bit and I have maybe half a car width into the curbing here, I may do one of two things, which is either grab about 5% trail brake or actually go down a gear to second gear, which will help give the extra rotation out of the car. Problem with going down to second gear every lap here is you will end up overslowing the car and not rolling enough speed out of it. So you want to try and be in third gear to roll the most speed through the corner. But being in third gear, you have to be extremely patient on throttle. And you can see that here as I don't start getting in throttle until extremely late in the corner. And you can see I actually come up onto the curb here, and that's actually why I go onto the throttle, because my radius has become too shallow. So now I use the throttle with the same steering input to actually increase my corner radius and start to track me out. So using that curb, using that throttle to increase my radius, but I kept the same steering angle throughout that entire section there and stayed in third gear. So ideally, again, I want to be about mid-track on exit here out of this corner, and I want to try and get back to about a car width off of the white line as I come up into the left-hand corner to kind of exit out of the S's. It's really important to get somewhat of a wide entry to this corner to carry as much speed up this hill as possible. And if you do it right, you should be able to take it just about flat out, if not, lift to about 95% at the top of the hill as the rear end gets pretty light. So it's kind of a late turn in. This particular lap I turned in just a touch earlier than I would have liked, so I needed to bail out just a little bit on the throttle. I tried not to touch too much of this curb. This is about as much as you can get, which is just running that left side tire just barely onto the curb. If you get any more of that, there's kind of a crest in the curb, and it will kind of pick up the car and upset the rear end and kick it out on you. So I usually try not to hit that curb. You like to get the left front on the white line, but again, I turned it a little bit early, and so that's why I grabbed that little bit of curb. But then it's back to full throttle, and as soon as you get up here to the crest of the hill, you need to straighten out the hands extremely quickly, because right around here, the rear end likes to just take a little kind of step out, and so just being on top of the car and prematurely straightening the hands will help save that. And as you can see, I can get all the way up to this curb. I try not to hit the curb because the curb can kind of suck the car over, step it over a little bit, and or upset the right rear if you come onto this curb while the car's still loaded up and turning, and that will cause a spin. So I try not to get too much onto this curb. As you can see, just a little bit there, but as when I hit that curb, the car wasn't completely loaded up, so the car was all nice and straight, so I was able to hit that curb and drive out of that one on full power. And continuing around this left-hand corner, because it's still part of the same complex, I consider it's you want to get down to the inside. This is just the car can take any line through here easily, flat out. I want to get down to the inside because that's the minimum distance around this corner. So you see me turn right down onto the grass as I come through here to try and set up for the Degnas coming up next. So that was a lot going through the whole S's, but let's go back, watch it one more time in the real speed. Just try and look for the patience that it takes on throttle and the steering inputs going through there, and kind of the compromises that I have to make to carry the maximum average speed through that section. Alright, so coming up to the Degnas, my braking point for Degna 1 is, I'd say, probably about the 75 point. You know, it's not quite to the 50. I want to use as much of the track as possible, get the left sides right on the white line, have to be extremely careful not to dip them into the grass, because if you dip them into the grass as you turn in, the rear end will kick out and you will for surely spin off, and in this particular section of corners likely hit the wall, which could be race ending. So it's just a little tap of the brakes, about 30% before I turn in. I go down one gear to fourth, and I turn in pretty early to kind of point the car at the apex, and then I actually straighten my hands up, and then I actually start turning a bit more aggressively. And I kind of do that because it's very easy if you turn in too late to just understeer and completely miss the corner. That's why I tip it in at first. But the last thing I want to do is actually ride too much of this curb. I can hit the curb with the right front tires, just about where all the rubber marks are, but if I actually get the right front up over the top of this curb, it will just pick the car up and set you way too wide on exit here, and you either end up in the gravel or straddling this curb, and when you straddle this curb, you have no grip, and it just shoots you straight off into the wall, which I'm sure many of us have done in practice, myself included. So that's kind of why I have kind of that two-stage turn into the corner. First to turn in so I don't understeer too late, and then the second to actually kind of bend the car around this curb. As I'm there, I can get quite aggressively into the throttle, hitting full throttle once the car tracks out a bit. I can get up onto these curbs. This is about as much of the curb as you want to use, keeping the left side tires off of the green part of the curb. The red and white is a consistent, kind of hill incline up, and then the green part of the curb up here is actually, a plateau. This is like a shelf up there. So if you get the left side tires up onto this shelf, that's when you start having the left side pod bottom out right here, and it just sucks the car straight, and you just ride right on the floor of the car with zero tires hitting the ground, straight off the curb and directly into that wall. So this is about as far onto the curb as you want to come with left side tires. A lot safer just to hit, maybe mid curb with the left side tires. And again, all of that comes from how you hit that first apex curb. Too much of the apex curb and it will throw you wider. There's kind of like a point I'm using is kind of like brake reference about a car width before. You can see kind of where there's kind of a darkened rubber patch here on the red and white curbing, and it kind of lightens up. I'm kind of using about a car length before that as my brake point for Degna 2. Not the best reference, but that's what I'm using to try and slow down. There's not too many reference points on the outside of the track that you can see easily. So again, kind of same thing as in Degna 1. I start to brake the car. I go down to second gear and kind of start to turn in, just tip the car into the corner because there's a lot of camber here. So I want to try and get the car down to the compression, and then I can power it out. So straighten the hands up, and then again bends the car around. You can use quite a bit more of this curbing. If you use a bit too much, it can just throw you a little wide on exit, which will just hurt your run out, but it's not as deadly as the apex curb in the first Degna. So back down, and once I get to that point, I immediately 50% power, get the car to rotate on exit, straighten the hands up, and then squeeze into full power as soon as my hands are straight. Just a little too soon on the power there, so rear end stepped out just a little bit, and again, you can use this curbing here as well. You can go a little bit too far over it and bottom the car out, but you do have the nice access road here to hopefully try and save the car and not do a tank slapper on the way out. So it's a little bit more forgiving than Degna 1, but still try not to use too much of that exit curb. So play back through that section one more time real speed so you can see it how it goes. So coming up to the hairpin, right-hander here is easily flat out. I want to take quite an early turn in to the corner to get a very late apex, because if you turn in too early and hit apex early on this corner, it'll throw you wide, and then you have a really bad approach for the hairpin. And I want to maximize my run out of the hairpin, because that's where I will gain the most time. So it's shooting for an extremely late apex on the curbing, just barely touching it, but not quite hitting the grass. So I'm set up on the far right-hand side of the track here for the brake zone to the hairpin. Basically, as soon as I get to the end of that curbing, I wait for the car to settle and straighten upright, so it's not loaded up on the left side tire still. Wait for the car to settle upright, and then it's hard on the brakes for the corner. Nice straight brake zone. This one, it's not, I've found it's not too important to get down onto the apex curbing or right onto the white line. You can roll about half a car width off and roll quite a bit of speed around the corner. I think the most important thing to focus on is your power on point. So oftentimes that's kind of V'ing off the corner, driving in a bit deep, getting all your rotation done, and then powering out of the corner, or rolling a speed around the outside so you can get to power earlier. Just coming right down and hugging the apex, I find doesn't yield as good of an exit, and you end up losing about 2/10 down into spoon. But one thing to consider if you are taking a wider entry, about half a car width off, is someone may try and dive bomb up the inside of you. So in race situation, especially if you're under pressure, you may have to take a little bit different line and adjust into here. Trailing the brake all the way down into the corner, getting that rotation. Again, I'm not quite on that curb, I'm on the white. The car's rotating, I got that little sense of rotation. So now it's pretty aggressively back in the throttle, about 50%, rotate the car on power, and then ease into full. I have to very quickly unwind the hands as the car is using the compression of the road, a little bit of camber to really hook itself around. I want to get those hands extremely straight so I can get back to that full power as soon as possible. Try and manage any wheel spin and just get the best drive out that I can. So again, struggle a little bit on this corner with consistency. I'm usually within about 1/10 of my optimal through there. So it's just always something to work on, trying to make sure you find what's most consistent for you so you don't lose a whole lot of time through there. Play it one more time. To these corners, just hug it to the right, easily flat out. Just want to minimize your lap distance around there. I don't think we need to look at those again. Coming up to spoon, one of the last very technical corners on the track. Start far right-hand side of the track. I use this access road as my brake marker for the corner. So once I pass the access road, I have a bit of a hard hit up to about maybe almost 50% there, but I like to try and bail out of that very quickly as I turn into the first apex, and you see I'm almost completely out of it before I even get to this first apex. I'm going to grab a couple downshifts into third gear through here, and I usually don't want to run up onto this curbing. I want to get right onto the white line as I go through there, and as soon as I hit that apex, I can get back a little bit into power, because I want the car to naturally track out here to the outside curbing, so I can turn and try and get on power as early as possible for a late apex onto the straightaway, because the straightaway is uphill, so it's extremely important to get a good exit out of there. This is very similar to the first two corners on the track, where I want to keep the right side tires always loaded. I don't want to be, go through this first corner, straighten the steering, get the car settled up, and then try and turn in again. I want to make sure that the car is always loaded on those right side tires. So it's always keeping a bit of left hand down and using your pedals to actually steer the car, using more throttle to increase your radius, using the brake to decrease the radius and turn into the corner. So here we go. It's not quite up to full power. It's only about 70% as I track out. And again, with the eyes, I want to be searching for this apex over here. Can't quite see it yet on the curbing, but if I'm looking over here at the curb on the right, I'm going to drive onto it, and it's going to suck the car off track. So again, want to keep the eyes looking through the corner and just let the car naturally track out and use your peripherals to get the car out here. You can lightly touch this curbing if you need to, but not quite ideal. I usually like to try and get the right side tires again right onto this white line. Now as I turn into the left-hand corner at the end of spoon to get onto the straight, I'm going to carry just a slight trail brake, only about 10%, not wanting to slow the car down at all. I actually end up overslowing just a touch there, but this is again a really patient corner where I just roll the speed through. This is another one where I want to try and stay in third gear through the corner. If I need to, I can go down to second, but again, I don't want to overslow the car, which will hurt my run out of the corner. But if you need that extra rotation to get down to this curbing, you can go to second. So I want to keep the hands extremely steady because it's a very long radius corner. There's still a lot of corner left to do, but I want to get down onto this this curbing on the apex. Once I get onto the curbing, I can use the curbing to help rotate the car, and that's when I can start to get in power, squeeze into it pretty aggressively, and then once I come off the curbing and can straighten the hands up, that's when I'm on full power driving out of the corner. And this is giving me the best run possible up the straight because I was able to roll third gear through there, and I was able to get on power very early. It's very easy to make the exit here. I'm not struggling to keep the car on track, and I get the best run I can uphill up the straightaway. So play back through spoon one more time, real speed. So 130R at the top of the straight, easily flat out. Like to take a nice early turn and get down to this curbing as soon as possible. You have plenty of track out on the exit, and that's just part of minimizing my lap distance. You go faster that way with a slower car like this. And now braking for the final hairpin, I believe it's the Casio triangle. My brake reference for this is right around the 100 board. I'm probably braking about the 110 as my marker. I can sometimes push it down to the 100 like I do on this particular lap. If you do get it down to the 100, you have to have a very good initial hit and carry quite a bit of initial brakes. You can see about 70, 80% right there. And quite a bit of bulk, 60, 50% bulk as I'm coming down the gears into the corner. As I start to turn into the corner, I start to trail off pretty straightforward there. I can use quite a bit of this first curb. You can get the right side tires up onto the green shelf part of the corner here without getting a 1X. I like to try and get the right side tires just up onto the top of the red and white curbing there. This time I missed it just a little bit because this curbing will help rotate the car, and I want to end up about mid to just right of mid-track for a nice easy turn onto what becomes the front straight. So as you can see, I'm actually starting to get back to throttle, just a little burst of throttle into the middle here, try and rotate the car back to the right. Because I didn't get quite as much of that curb as I wanted, I end up just maybe a quarter car length too far to the left here. So it's a very quick turn back into the corner, just that dab a trail brake. And same thing, I want to use this curbing again to rotate the car. This one, you can also get the left side tires up onto the green curb, but it'll usually upset the car a little bit here. It'll kind of bounce, do a bit of a tank slap, or you can't get the power down, which hurts your run down the straightaway. Costs you a couple tenths down the straight. So I like to just get those left side tires just onto the red and white curbing. And once I'm there, it's, again, back in the throttle pretty aggressively. Once the hands are straight, I can get to full. I gave just a little bit too much too soon there. Had the rear end step out. You can use this curbing here on exit, no problem. You can get all the way over onto the green with the right side tires. You won't get an off track or anything there, and it's pretty flat, flat curbing to come off of. In fact, I actually dip the right side tires just onto that curbing as I come out of the corner, trying to minimize my track distance as I come through the final corner, just staying nice and tight on the inside and then letting it naturally track out to not scrub too much speed off the front tires as I come to the line. So play back through Casio triangle one more time in real speed. There you have the 154.533 around Suzuka for the Indy Pro Car. I think that time should be pretty competitive in conditions like this. Probably end up there in the top 5-10 lap times of the week if you're able to do that in these conditions. So hopefully you guys learned something and that helps you out with your lines and setups for this week at Suzuka. See you guys out on track.